Today I'm going to be making jack-o'-lantern cookies. This was a recipe back in Southern Living magazine back in probably the 90s or so. So my mom has been making me these cookies for a really long time. And they're one of my favorite parts of Halloween. Make sure to read the recipe all the way through once. You're going to need a half a cup of butter or margarine softened, 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of canned or cooked mashed pumpkin, 1 tablespoon of grated orange rind, 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a half a cup of raisin, a half a cup of chopped pecans. You're going to need frosting, and you're going to need decorative candies such as candy corn or chocolate chips to make the face. The directions to make jack-o'-lantern cookies. Combine butter, sugar, pumpkin, and orange rind in a large bowl. Beat at medium speed on an electric mixer until light and fluffy. Combine flour and the next 4 ingredients. Beat at low speed of an electric mixer until blended. Stir in raisins and pecans. Drop dough by heaping tablespoonfuls 4 inches apart onto lightly greased cookie sheets. Lightly press each cookie into a 3.5-inch circle with fingertips dipped in flour. Bake at 375 degrees for 16 to 18 minutes or until brown. Cool cookies completely on wire racks. Spread frosting on tops of cookies. Decorate with raisins, candy corn, chocolate morsels, and cinnamon candies if desired. It makes 1.5 dozen cookies. Before you start making your treat, you should preheat the oven so that it's ready to go when you are. Now the recipe said to preheat it to 375 degrees. Bake, 375, start. Get out all the things that you'll need: bowls, utensils, ingredients, etc. Before you start cooking, the first thing you need to do is to wash your hands. You need to wash your hands for 20 seconds. 1,000, 2, 1,003, 1,004, 1,005, 1,006, 1,007, 1,008, 1,009, 1,010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so we're supposed to combine the butter, the sugar, the pumpkin, and the orange rind in a large bowl. Okay, so it says that I need a half a cup of butter. And it says on this that 8 tablespoons equals 1 stick or half a cup. So I'm going to put this whole thing in the bowl. Okay, sugar, it says we need 1 cup of sugar. So 1 cup. Here's my sugar. A little bit more than that. Here. There we go. Okay, and then I pour that 1 cup of sugar in there. Okay. Okay, so you are going to need 1 cup of canned or cooked mashed pumpkin. And so this is Libby's 100% pure pumpkin. And instead of like flipping it over and just dumping it out like that, that would make a mess. So what you should do is take a spatula and then dig out the pumpkin from the can and then put it in there. And that way you have 1 cup. And see, it comes right off because it's nice and wet. And then take the spatula and dump it in there. And then you're going to need a tablespoon of grated or orange rind, and this is orange peel. So what you do, you just tip it over, pour it in there. There we go. That's about a tablespoon, and then you pour that in there. And then it says that you beat at medium speed on an electric mixer until light and fluffy. And my mom says that it never gets fluffy. So just do it for about 5 minutes. Now before you start mixing, make sure that your butter is soft enough that it will actually mix. And also when using a mixer, make sure that you put it in the bowl and that you start it on the lowest setting, because if you start it on anything higher, stuff will go everywhere and then you'll have a mess in your kitchen. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on to 1, which is the lowest one. And I'm going to go around and around and around to make sure that everything gets mixed. And you have to be careful, you know, don't stick your hands in the bowl because you might get cut with these because they're going fast. And now that everything is a little bit calmer, I'm going to go up a little bit. Okay. But you need to go at the speed that you feel comfortable and is safe. And see, I still see butter chunks. So I'm going to turn it up a bit. Okay, still see some butter chunks. And see, this is a little fast for me. So I might turn it down a little bit. There we go. And see, I don't want butter chunks in my cookies. I mean, I love butter, but that's not how it's supposed to look. Okay, so the next step says combine flour and the next 4 ingredients. So we need 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And so what you do, you don't just stick this big old cup in this bag. What you do is you take a spoon and you put it in the cup. And flour is a very, very messy thing. So you might spill it everywhere. It's okay if you do. Now, you see this? This is not level. So what you need to do, you need to take a knife, okay? And you need to hold it over the flour bag. And you gotta pat it down so that each space is full, but still, see, we have too much. Okay, so what we're gonna take is not the sharp part, but the other part, and we're going to cut that off and put it back in. So now you have a smooth, level surface, okay? So it says we need 2 cups of flour, right? So this is 1 cup, so we put 1 cup in there, and then we fill up the next one. Okay, so the recipe says the next 4 ingredients, and the next 4 ingredients are baking powder, baking soda, salt, and ground cinnamon. Okay, so you are going to need 1 teaspoon of baking powder, which is this. And this one, you open it and you dip it down there, and then this right here acts as a knife so you can level it out because you don't want to put all of that in there. Okay, so you go like this. See, nice and smooth, just like the flour. I'm gonna pour that in there. Okay, and then the next thing I need is baking soda. And in this case, if you get the baking powder and the baking soda mixed up like I do sometimes, it's okay because you both need a teaspoon of each, so it'll be fine. Now this baking soda doesn't have a leveling thingy, so you are going to use a knife there too. Okay, to level it off a little bit. There you go. See, nice and level. And then you're going to dump this into the bowl. And then the next 2 ingredients, 1/4 a teaspoon of salt. Okay, that's the little itty bitty one. So 1/4 a teaspoon of salt right here. Oops, there you go. That's a little more, but it's okay, not by much. And then the 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Okay, this one, I'm gonna shake it to level it a little bit. There's a lot on there. I'm gonna take that. There you go. Then put that in there. Okay, so now I'm going to combine the dry ingredients by taking this whisk and mixing it. Okay, and then you're going to combine the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna pour it in there. Okay, and then I'm going to beat at a low speed. Okay, cut. Okay, sticking those in there, starting off with 1. There you go. A nice, good speed.
Tell them, do not, as tempting as the batter looks, never eat uncooked cookie batter because flour is raw and it needs to be cooked before eaten. So never eat cookie batter. Say, my mom wants me to remind you, especially if it has eggs in it. But this has no eggs or anything, it just has raw flour. So.
The next step says to stir in the raisins and pecans. And it says you need 1/2 cup of raisins, which is about 2 1-ounce boxes. And then it says you also need 1/2 cup of chopped pecans. So I got these ready. So I'm going to dump this in. I'm going to dump the raisins in. Okay, put those in there. And then I'm going to mix it all together. One thing that I just remembered that I forgot to tell you is when you are working with raisins, make sure you do not drop any on the floor. Because if there's a dog around, like Rhapsody, or at my house, if Trey's around or Sienna's around, if they eat that raisin, they could get really sick. So do not drop raisins when doing this recipe. So now it says to drop the dough by heaping tablespoons 4 inches apart onto a lightly greased cookie sheet. For this, we're going to use parchment paper so we don't have to grease the cookie sheet. Okay, and then you lightly press each cookie into a 3.5-inch circle with fingertips dipped in flour. And you put your fingertips in flour so it doesn't stick to you. Okay, and so here's my tablespoon, and that's a heaping tablespoon. So I'm going to take my wooden spoon and get it off of there. Okay. Dipping my fingers in flour. Then I'm going to press down and make a circle. And now I'm going to put these cookies in the oven. Make sure you put your oven mitt on so you don't get burned. And the directions say that you need to bake for 16 to 18 minutes. And you always want to put it on the lowest time first because you don't know how well it's going to cook. Kitchen timer, 16. So one of the ways that you can tell that your food is done is to listen for the timer, which is going off right now, so I'm going to turn it off. And also to take a glove and check to make sure that your product looks done. In this case, the product is cookies, and they need to be nice and brown. Come over here, Mom. So I'm going to pull them out a little bit. Yep, those look like my cookies that I eat. And so I'm going to pull them out. And then I'm going to set them down on this wire rack. And before I pulled them out, I should have probably turned off the oven. You want to make sure that you let your cookies cool first, because if you put on the frosting first, then it will just run off the cookie and not stay on the cookie, and then it's not tasty. And the cookies need to cool on a wire rack. So what you do, you take an oven mitt, put it on, hold this pan with your other hand, hold the spatula, and then you pick it up, put it on the wire rack. Pick it up 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 on the wire rack. And now it's time to decorate. I'm going to be decorating with orange frosting, chocolate chips, raisins, and then these stars that came with the frosting. Now, if you decorate with chocolate chips or raisins, make sure that you do not drop them on the floor because they're not good for dogs. The first step in decorating these cookies is to make your cookie a jack-o'-lantern, which means you need to put the frosting on first. Okay, so I'm going to spread the frosting all over my cookie because I want a nice orange jack-o'-lantern. Now that I have my pumpkin, I am going to make a face to make it a jack-o'-lantern. And I think I want chocolate chips for my eyes. So I'm going to put one there for my eye and another one there. And then I'm going to make a nose. So I'm going to take a raisin for a nose. And then I'm going to use the stars as a smile. Maybe. You can kind of see it, right? It looks like a jack-o'-lantern. But if you have candy corn, you should make eyebrows out of candy corn. But I went to the store and there wasn't any candy corn. So I would definitely put candy corn right here for eyebrows. But it's okay. And now the most important thing of all, the taste test.